Good evening, everybody. If you're watching this, thanks for tuning in. This is bonus content for the Golf Gambling Podcast, where I will break down every single hole at Oak Hill. Just something to say before I kind of get into it. This is kind of a special show for me. I live in Rochester. I've been going to Oak Hill since I was a little kid. I went there in '95 for the Ryder Cup. I was there for the U.S. Amateur, I think, in '98. I remember back then there was a guy who was just carrying his own bags. My dad said, "Hey, why don't you go out there and carry his bags?" So I ended up caddying for a guy in the U.S. Am. He didn't advance, but I at least took the load off him. I am caddying again the following summer at Oak Hill. Went to the 2003 PGA, went to the 2013 PGA, and now I'll be going to the 2023 PGA in a couple of days. And I live 5 minutes from the golf course. Sometimes I just randomly go over there. I drive by, I see how it's looking. I've been following the progress of when they're building the new holes there, putting all the construction. So it's kind of surreal, being able to break it down tonight and actually having a forum to talk about it. But I'm really looking forward to this. I hope I provide maybe some good insight for anybody watching tonight. So why talk about how this show is going to go? So I'm going to be using Google Earth and this is my process for breaking down a golf course, especially this is really a vital one when we go to a major championship where we haven't seen it before, or a new golf course in the PGA Tour, or I just need a refresher a little bit about, what types of guys and what type of shots these guys are going to hit, what type of guys I think is going to favor. So I go through Google Earth. I basically chart out each hole. I look at where carry distances are over bunkers, or where it is to the dog leg, or where the water hazards are, basically. And then I try and guess and formulate, okay, what type of approach shots I think these guys are going to hit. What type of tee shots I think is going to hit. Does this course kind of remind me of anything? Does it strike a memory from a tournament years ago? So that's really important, I think, for Oak Hill. And I think that's going to be helpful with me kind of guiding you guys, breaking that down tonight. It's mostly going to be focused on off the tee performance and with the approach shots. I'm not going to do much with the greens or the greenside surrounds. I might mention a couple things with it, but overall for handicapping, I think that's the most important thing you got to figure out for not just Oak Hill, but for any tournament. What type of tee shots these guys are going to hit, what type of approach shots these guys are going to hit. That's the real important stuff for you guys. That's going to be mostly with your ball striking models, because you're not going to putt your way to winning a PGA Championship. So we're going to focus on just all on off the tee and iron shots. And we're going to talk about what clubs these guys are going to hit, whether that's going to favor any particular player, any consequences for missing the fairway, other opportunities to maybe shorten the golf course. There's kind of few as I've broke it down, but we'll talk about possibly some places where you might see a longer hitter have a little bit of an edge. And then we'll just go through it. It's going to be kind of a casual, loosey-goosey show. I'm going to have Google Earth up. I'm kind of going to just go through it. I have a lot of notes that I'll try to refer to, but I'm going to try and take my time, go through it. So sit back, get a drink, and just listen to me ramble, basically. So why don't I give you some general information about Oak Hill and the evolution of it before I get to some commentary, and then we'll get to the golf course. So this is a Donald Ross design. It's the East Course. It was later renovated by Robert Trent Jones, I think, in the 60s, and Tom Fazio in the 70s. And the renovations done by Robert Trent Jones and Fazio were not very well received. I think when that Golf Digest hole by hole video, which, by the way, I wanted to show that concurrently with this stream, did not go well with my internet. Go watch it, though. It's a great, if you want great visuals of it, go do that. This is going to be more, overhead viewing of it. But basically, they had quotes from players who basically just hated it. They panned it. And it really took a lot of the soul out of this place. It made it kind of just robotic, one-dimensional. And then over time, it just, the love of trees at Oak Hill kind of got the best of it over the years. There was a lot of trees planted when it was first created. I think, there was a member of the course who just went around planting acorns all over the property. I think someone asked him one time how many trees did you plant at one point? I think he said over 30,000 or so, and then he just stopped counting. But Andrew Green, and I love this line, when he was interviewed by Fried Egg, he said, well, little trees turn into big trees, and that turns into a big problem. And that was a giant problem at Oak Hill. And that's one of the things we're going to show you tonight. I'm going to show you, we're going to go back in time to 2013, the last time we had a PGA here at Oak Hill. I'm going to show you all that tree removal. And it's going to, I'll show you how they opened up the holes, what trees they kept for strategic value. But you're going to see a really big change. And it really shows how necessary this renovation was just to keep Oak Hill relevant, but also, just how great of a job Andrew Green did doing with this. But so over time, though, the trees grew in, a lot of overhanging limbs. It just became very claustrophobic, very tight, very narrow. The greens also, Tom Fazio renovated them. Robert Jones did. Well, they became circular in nature. And over time, when you have circular greens, they tend to shrink with the mowing patterns. You also have some sand build up on the edges that kind of, creates little ridges, and what greens that once maybe fell off on the sides, now they kind of act as a little bit of a buffer in a bowl. So these greens were tired. It was outdated, was a very difficult, demanding golf course still. Absolutely. You saw it in 2003. They kind of tricked the course out a little bit. It was in August. It was firm. They really grew up the rough. It was narrow. It didn't present very well. And that leaderboard, if you go back and look, it's kind of a tough scene. 2003 was a pretty tough scene in general for golf, but that was not a great leaderboard. And then again, you saw in 2013, Jason Duffner won. We'll get to that tournament a little bit, but that was a tournament where absolutely the Bombers just got crushed. They had no power, and no pun intended. It's just all the tools, all the tricks that they use to overpower a golf course, they just was taken away. It really paid to be just aggro that week, and that's just because of what happened to Oak Hill over the years. So Andrew Green came in and he finished the renovation in 2020. Among the big changes, and you'll see this when I go back in time, and then as I go back to the future, all the greens and bunkers are renovated. The greens were squared off. They were expanded. They got old drawings from Donald Ross to basically just say, okay, this is what these greens look like. They're no longer circular nature. They're more, they're squared off. They got some edges to it. They also lengthened the golf course. There's a lot of new tee boxes. I'm going to show you where the new tee boxes are. Back in 2013, this played just under 7,200 yards, the par 70. This is now just under 7,400 yards. They added about 200 yards to this place. I'm going to, when I go through each hole, I'll tell you how many yards they actually added to each one. I think there's only 2 holes where they reduced the yardage on it. So, and I'll point that out too. Another change they also did, I just mentioned the bunkers. These are really, really penal bunkers now. They're small. They have steep-faced grass faces. Andrew Green also mentioned, too, that you probably are not going to see guys bail out in bunkers this week. They are tough to get up and down from. You might see some guys having to go sideways. They really look like Open Championship pot bunkers. There's going to be some really awkward lies in them. You don't want to be in the bunkers this week. It doesn't matter how good of a bunker player you are. It's going to be tough for everybody. It might come down to a little bit of luck. And if you find yourself in a fairway bunker, you're not getting to the green unless you're very close to the green. Maybe you can get up over the face, but it's usually probably just, splash out, get to a wedge, try and get up and down from there. It'll be very tough. Another big change. The greens were converted from bent POA to pure bent grass. They also had a new irrigation system planted or put underneath the greens, sub-air. And then as far as the rough, they kept that the same, and that's what you're going to notice when you look at the Google Earth, when you go back in time. Tee to green, with the mowing lines and everything, other than a couple new holes, it's pretty similar. They repositioned some bunkers, but just where the mowing lines are, where the fairways are, it's the same, essentially. But it's a rye. It's a combination of a rye and bluegrass rough. I have not been able to determine how long the rough is. I drove by today. It looked, by my estimation, about 3.5 inches. I know there was a video, I think, that came out a couple days ago where somebody was dropping balls around the green and they poked a hole. It looked like the rough was about your index finger there, and mine's about, 3.5 inches there. But there is a different type of grass around the green. It's called RTF grass. It's some fancy name, tall fescue. It's tall fescue around the green, and that's a slightly different variation of a northern type of grass that you'll see from tee to green here. It's a very thick bladed grass. It doesn't require a lot of water. It's very dense. It's very tough to chip out of too. So I think this week, if you're not hitting greens, you are in a world of trouble. Either you're in one of these bunkers, you're not going to be able to get up and down from there. With some of the weather we've had recently, they might play firm and pretty fast. Chipping back from under it's going to be really unpredictable. You're not really going to know how it comes out. That's going to be pretty difficult too. So as far as the rough length goes, I think it's going to start at about 3.5. It's going to grow through the tournament. We're not going to get much. Well, we might get rain on next Friday. Other than that, though, no rain. It's actually been really good weather up here. Maybe 4.5, maybe 5 inches in certain spots, by the end of the tournament. But that's typically how deep the rough the PGA has kind of wanted these tournaments to have over the last few. So, and then just the weather forecast right now. So this weekend is beautiful. It's in the 70s. It's sunny. We had a lot of rain. It hasn't been a very good spring up here. We've had a lot of rain in April. And that was my big concern back in December. I thought this thing was going to be cold, soggy, soft. The last week or so has really turned around. The sun has been out. It hasn't rained all that much. Or actually, it hasn't rained at all. We're not going to get any rain except for maybe the thunderstorms next Friday. But this place is drying up pretty quick. I noticed that in my yard. I live 5 minutes from the course, and I assume that Oak Hill probably drains a little better in my yard. And my soil here is starting to get pretty brown. I'm trying to plant some grass seed out front, and it's sucking all the water down that I'm putting on it. So, I don't think these fairways are going to be, concrete like we saw maybe like a Winged Foot or Olympic Fields. Yeah, you might be able to get some roll out of these things. Maybe more than what I thought it might be, about a month ago. So that'll be interesting to see when balls are in the air, how far these things are kind of bouncing down the fairway here. As far as some other factors with the weather, next week it is going to cool off though. It's not going to get past 70 degrees, I think, any day. It's mostly going to hover in the mid to upper 60s for the most part. In the morning, mid 50s or so. So that's something you got to consider too, where, and we're going to talk about where some of these bunkers are and some of these hazards. With cooler temperatures, those carry distances aren't going to really be all that much, or as much as what you may be used to. Like you're watching the Byron Nelson, it's pretty hot down there. These guys are bombing it. I think for every 10 yards, you lose about 2 to 3 yards of carry distance. So in 50-60 degree weather, that actually might, come into play for some of these guys, whether they want to take on some extra risk by trying to, pull driver and go for some stuff. There will be a little bit of humidity starting on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That helps maybe offset a little bit of the cooler temperatures as far as the carry distances. On Thursday, though, really low humidity. Ball's going to be probably pretty dead in the air that day. Again, a chance of thunderstorms maybe on Friday. We might have some windy conditions too on Saturday. I saw a weather report of possibly west winds up to 35 miles per hour. That might be a wild day. I'm going to be at the golf course that day. I'm going to be there on Friday as well, assuming thunderstorms stay away. But overall, I think with this forecast, as long as it doesn't rain a whole lot on Friday, I think we're going to get pretty firm greens. It's really when I mentioned it's really dried out around here. The fairways are going to roll out a little bit. Maybe help some of the short hitters as long as they hit it dead straight, get a little extra distance out of that too. But they won't be concrete. It won't be like Winged Foot. There might be some holes that we'll talk about where if you hit a dead straight shot, you might not be able to hold the fairway. But the ball, I think the most important thing though, the ball's not going to fly as far as what these guys are used to. We saw it at the Masters when it got kind of cold and just crappy weather. It just wasn't going quite as far. It lengthened the golf course a little bit, and it'll make this golf course play a little longer if it's not, carrying that far. So, we'll see what happens. So like I mentioned though, in 2003, we'll talk about some tournaments where, that had been at Oak Hill, and then we'll transition to this one. So in 2003, it was won by Sean McKeel, his first and only win on the PGA Tour. He beat Chad Campbell by 2 shots. He hit a 7-iron, 174 yards to about 6 inches to end it. One of the greatest closing approach shots, I think, in golf history. I understand it's Sean McKeel, but and that was a pressure packed situation. He was only up 1. I mean, Chad Campbell was kind of in trouble there too, but you got to execute the shot. We're going to show that shot later. It's not a difficult, it's a pretty difficult approach shot. It's all carry. And the fact under pressure like that with a guy who hadn't done anything at that point, in his career to just stuff a 7-iron on one of the hardest holes on the golf course to 6 inches. It's a great shot. He earned that plaque, in the intermediate rough there where it is. And then 2013, Jason Duffner won. And I want to get some stats from that tournament. So the winning score is -10. The average driving distance of that tournament was, and this kind of shows how far we've come, 274.1. That's pretty short. I think it's probably because maybe because the PGA Tour or the PGA of America, how they calculate this stuff, it's not all drives. They just pick 2 holes and they take the average. Maybe just pick bad holes to do it with. It's also if the ball found the rough because it was so narrow, ball just stops. And pretty much all the bombers got cut. Rory was in the top 10, Jason Day was in the top 10, Dustin Johnson was in the top 10. Other than that, though, it was just all the short, accurate guys. That's it. Basically, if we were doing models back then and gambling on golf, which I wasn't at that point, if you took just short, accurate, you probably cleaned up. Although I did give my dad a bet Jason Duffner at 35-1, and he ended up cashing big on that. So, hey, maybe I was just destined to do all this stuff. The driving accuracy rates were about 56% because everything was really narrow. That was versus the PGA Tour average of 61%. Narrow, some tough, awkward driving holes. Guys were hitting a whole lot of fairways, but guys are hitting greens kind of at a decent rate. It was still below PGA Tour average, but it was 61% versus 64% average on PGA Tour. Where guys are getting in trouble, though, was around the green. Guys are only getting up and down about 48% of the time versus about 57% clip on the PGA Tour that year. When you got the thick rough and, these Donald Ross greens, they were running fast, they're undulated. It was tough, especially if you miss the wrong spots. I think, I'm not going to get too much in the greens, the green side surrounds in this video tonight, but if you're missing greens with how this rough, how dense it's going to be, and the changes they've made to the greens and how firm and fast they might be running this week, good luck trying to get up and down, especially from these bunkers too. So before I get into all the holes, I know I've been rambling a little bit. I want to talk about just kind of golf theory in general. And, I've been speculating since, I've been talking about this tournament since December. This is going to favor a bomber. And some of that was from, mostly weather concerns. But, there's the opinion of a lot of people that anytime you go to a longer golf course with narrow fairways and thick rough, just target the bombers. And it's not quite as simple as that. There's other factors that go into it. There's also been examples of other golf courses with those conditions that didn't favor bombers. So I kind of want to just go over some prominent examples, and that's going to lead me to what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for similarities in some of these things and why at certain major championships it did just favor bombers. Is that going to translate to here? So I think the most prominent example, it's an example, it's a golf course that's been talked about as far as a comp course, Winged Foot. And there definitely is some similarity as far as squared off greens. Some of the openings to the greens are pretty wide, narrow fairways, thick roughed, parklands. It's a very low hanging fruit, easy comp. But let's talk about why DeChambeau won it by 1 million and why Matthew Wolff was, well ahead of the field and why driving distance was a giant factor towards your total strokes gain that week. Well, it's mostly because the USGA kind of messed up. I think Patrick Cantlay mentioned this in his interview, No Laying Up, where the mowing lines of where the dog legs curved, essentially, if you were a straight hitter, the dog legs were just too close to the green at that point. You couldn't lay back, or it was too close to the tee box at that point. You couldn't lay back because you'd be way too far back for your approach shot. So you had to hit driver. The problem was the fairways are so firm in 2020. You kind of saw this earlier in the year with the BMW with really firm fairways. Fairways are so firm that if you hit driver, you couldn't control where it ended up, and it would just bound right through the fairway. And once it hits the rough, because it was USGA rough, it would just stop at that point. So at that point, and I think the driving accuracy rates at Winged Foot that week was less than 50%. No one was hitting fairways, just none. You couldn't do it. And if you're a shorter hitter who just hit it straight, it didn't matter at that point how straight you hit it. It was just going to go in the rough anyways. So at that point, it just came to, okay, just hit it as far as you can. If you were a shorter hitter who just hit it through the fairway into the rough, you had a longer approach shot. You couldn't make it to the green. You had to basically hack out and try and get up and down from about 125 yards. Meanwhile, you had Bryce and Matthew Wolff who just hit it a mile. There are also opportunities for them to cut corners and shorten the golf course and basically gouge out with a wedge. Bryson also mentioned that the mouths of a lot of the greens were open and you just kind of bounce the ball to it. That's why Bombers prevailed at Winged Foot. It wasn't just narrow, thick rough. The conditions and how the golf course was set up, contributed to that. There's also Bethpage Black. That's another example of a golf course people are using this week. Well, it wasn't that fairways were hard to hit that year. The average driving accuracy rates for the 2019 PGA at Bethpage Black was 64%. Like, that's pretty high. It's about, it's high for PGA for major championship standards for like a PGA or US Open. But it's about PGA Tour average, and the fairways are kind of soft. It really was driver heavy. But for the most part, guys were hitting fairways that week. The problem was at Bethpage is that all these greens, it's a combination of two factors. One, a lot of these greens are kind of on islands where the fairway would run out and there'd be a large swath of just thick rough. And then these greens were kind of just on islands, just kind of hanging out by themselves. The approach shot was all carry distance. And if you did happen to find yourself in the rough at Bethpage Black and you don't have a lot of length there, when the approach shot is all carry distance at that point, you're not getting the green. You got to hit a high shot and you're either landing in the rough again or in a bunker, not getting up and down. That's one thing that shorter hitters had against them. If you're Brooks Koepka or Justin Johnson at Bethpage Black, if you're in the rough there, you already can have a shorter club out of the rough, higher ball flight. Greens are kind of soft that week too. You also had a lot of elevated greens too. That also didn't help matters if you were in the rough. Either you got to carry it all and it's above you. That's why DJ and Koepka were just so far ahead of everybody that week. And when you look at the rest of the top 10, you look at guys that have a lot of length and can do similar things. That's why they prevailed. You also had Harding Park. That was a shorter golf course, but some of the approach shot proximities that are we're going to see that next week at Oak Hill, they're going to be pretty similar to what we're going to see. But that's a golf course too, where, they actually, before the tournament, they had pretty wide fairways. They shrunk them considerably, about 25 yards wide. That's about as wide as what we're going to see at most points of Oak Hill. Here you had thick, like ryegrass or bluegrass rough, low driving accuracy rates. There wasn't a big difference between either just missing off the fairway or missing wide. There wasn't really a whole lot of adversity, to having a big miss there. However, even though the rest of that top 10 was full of bombers, DJ, Scotty Scheffler, Tony Finau, Xander did very well that tournament. Even Cam Champ did well. Matthew Wolff did well. Bryson did well. All these guys were hitting it a mile. Just had a giant advantage of distance. Colin Morikawa still won. And a lot of people want to point to the fact that Morikawa, got out with his putter, which he did. He drained everything over the weekend. But Morikawa hits 75% of his fairways. And he's a tremendous mid to long iron player. And at Harding Park, everything's really out in front of you. It's a lot of really straight holes and the fairways are pretty soft. So if you hit it pretty straight, chances are you're going to find the fairway at that point. And if you're a really good iron player like Morikawa, you're going to hit a lot of greens. You're okay at that point. Now, he was the exception to the rule. Everybody else was bombers, but it at least gave him a chance to compete. So that's something you want to maybe look for too. Like, are there just a lot of straight holes, even if it's narrow? If you can you get a guy who gets hot, hits a lot of fairways, and is good with their irons, yeah, a shorter hitter could have a chance in those situations. And then he had Baltusrol back in 2016. Obviously, golf was a little different back then, but that was actually had a similar yardage as Oak Hill is going to have this week. That was 7,400 yards, par 70, tree line, thick rough, Parkland's Northeast, PGA Championship, very similar to what we're going to see this week. That did not produce a bomber fest, though. In fact, accuracy off the tee contributed more to your total strokes gain off the tee that week than driving distance. It was actually less than the PGA Tour average that week. There were a couple bombers up there, like a Jason Day. But otherwise, though, it was mostly your ball strikers. A lot of guys who were just short and accurate did well at that PGA. This is what happened in that PGA, though. And I haven't broken down Baltusrol all that closely, but I looked in the overhead of it. Again, everything's really out in front of the player. If you pretty much just hit a dead straight shot, you're going to hold the fairway. It was also a little wider too than like what we're going to see at Oak Hill, but a little more generous for that. If you just hit a straight shot, you're fine. And that's another condition too. Again, if everything off the tee is kind of right in front of you, maybe a shorter player can do well. So that's going to be I'm going to be looking for, and I'm going to show you in this video tonight. And I'm finally getting to it. Are there any holes or tee shots where I think if you just hit it dead straight, you don't have a lot of room to stay in the fairway? Either it's going to bound off, or maybe you miss a little bit. You just don't have a lot of real estate, and maybe you just is better just hit it as far as you can. Or if you can hit it over trouble, maybe that's where a bomber could have an edge. Are there any places where a bomber could find a shortcut where a shorter hitter can't to really gain an edge, like Bryson and Matthew Wolf did at Wingfoot? I'll try and find some of those places at Oak Hill. Are there any holes where, kind of like with Bethpage Black, it's all carry distance to the green? Either the green is elevated, or there's a hazard in front, or there's just a lot of thick rough where basically you got to hit a really high ball flight to it. Or if there's any holes where everything's just right out in front of the player, if you take a guy who just hits it dead straight, he's going to be fine. And that actually gives him kind of the edge on that hole over a guy who, might miss the fairway, but he's actually now in a worse spot than that player. So why don't we begin? Let's start with hole number 1. Let's add this to my screen. Okay, that's the 16th. Let's go back to hole number 1. Where are you? Here we go. Okay. Told you it's going to be kind of a loosey-goosey show. Okay, so this is the first tee. Here's the clubhouse right here. So this is a par 4, 460 yards. It was 460 in 2013 as well, so no difference in yardage. It was the 7th most difficult hole in 2013. So in lieu of the video that I wanted to show you guys, incorporate the Golf Digest one, I'm going to give the blurb from the PGA Championship app here of what they say about each hole. So this hole is called the Challenge. So Ben Hogan once called this hole the toughest opening test in championship golf. The opening tee shot is from an elevated tee to a slight dogleg left. A great drive can take advantage of a fairway down slope at 290 yards. Allen's Creek runs across the fairway hole at 360 mark. The danger off the tee is out of bounds to the right and 3 bunkers on the left. The green is well guarded by grass hummocks and greenside bunker short right. So according to Ben Hogan, one of the toughest opening tee shots in golf, probably not so much now. But when you go back in time here, you can really see a lot of the differences with the tree removal. So back in 2013, you had all of these trees right here. It just, everything looks so narrow. You got a lot of trees over here, basically protecting against going into Allen's Creek over here. Didn't have any fairway bunkers here either. Still pretty narrow here. It's only about 25 yard wide fairway, but your sight lines are very limited. You're looking straight down. You got, basically trees left, trees right. Now, almost all these trees are basically gone except for this one tree right here. It's a little closer to the tee box. If you want to start the ball left and maybe fade it back, this tree might give you a little bit of trouble. But in its place, instead of the trees, you have these 3 bunkers right here. It's about 265 to this first bunker, 293 to carry here. See, these are over here. These are the mounds and the hummocks. And I wish I had the video to really show you, but go watch it. Kind of think about like chocolate drop mounds, or like when you go to like a Pete Dye golf course, like Sawgrass, like, the mogul mounds, like they're less severe than those. Think of it like that. Basically just little mounds in the rough here that if you find yourself, first of all, you might have a horrible lie in the rough there. And second of all, it might be on a downslope because it's on the wrong side of one of these mounds here. So there's these little annoyances that Andrew Green put in, off the fairway here. There's some around the green as well. He did a really good job putting these in. These trees are still over here on the right, still protecting against Allen's Creek. I wish they would take it out. There's probably some members over here of Oak Hill probably had other thoughts on the matter. They want a little bit of privacy. Maybe don't want anybody slicing into their pool right here. But so Allen's Creek is not really in play down the right. So what club are you going to use off the tee? I mean, you got to nut up and hit driver, essentially. You basically, the optimal shot shape off the tee is a right to left shot. It's about 2. And I think most tee shots are probably going to land in this grid here. There is a day, maybe we get some strong west winds. That's going to basically have the ball at the player's back. You can probably see a lot of guys carry these bunkers over on the left here, maybe get a little bit of rollout if the greens play or the fairways play a little firm. Hit here. By the way, all this analysis, by the way, is assuming that guys execute the tee shot. I mean, I think I need to say this before I continue. Even though a bomber may have an edge here, you got to hit from the fairway. There's examples of if you're in the rough here and you're on with these mounds, these hitting in a bunker is absolutely just death at this place. You got to find the fairway. It is going to be tough though. I mean, it was 55% in 2013. There's going to be more drivers, the longer golf course, probably that driver actually rate's probably going to go down. You got to find the fairway. But assuming you do, probably most pro shots are going to be in this zone right here, either for a shorter hitter, you hit it about 284. If they're a little bit offline for a shorter hitter, this is kind of the wing foot effect. See how the tee box is kind of going this way and the fairway's going this way? You got to have a count for that. So if you're off a little bit, and because the fairway is about 20 feet below the tee box here, might run off into the rough. So that's not ideal. And you might have a little bit of tree trouble here. But if you can execute this shot here and land here, you're going to have about 150 to 175 into the green. If you do miss the fairway, you have this creek here, Allen's Creek to worry about. From the rough, you should be able to probably get over it at least. There's a generous opening to the green here. We might be able to bounce the ball to it. If you're in the fairway bunker, though, it might be tough getting it over the creek here. You might see some guys, if they're in the bunkers here, have to kind of splash out in front of the creek and then try to get up and down from 460. So who has the edge here on this hole? I mean, if you can carry these bunkers, take them out of play, that's great. Anything to kind of shorten up the approach shot a little bit, that works though. But I mean, you got to find the fairway here. I would probably think a longer hitter might have a little bit of an edge, but just find the fairway. Don't mess around. Get in this box right here. Set up about a mid iron to the green. Get out of there with a par. Okay. Second hole. So this is the par 4, 405th. It's 405 yards. It was 401 in 2013. So we've added about 5 yards to this hole. And this hole is called, let's get up here. It's called Breather. It's anything but it's a breather. You need a precise tee shot is needed on this hole, short par 4 due to the severely narrow fairway and deep fairway bunkers on both sides. The elevated green slopes severely from back to front. An approach shot below the hole gives the player the best chance for a birdie. That description doesn't really describe, I think, some of the challenges to this hole. So first off, let's go back in time and show you how this changed. And there's some moderate tree removal here. If we go back to 2013. So there's a couple trees that removed over here, kind of open things up a little bit on the left. You can see my markings of where the bunkers are. There still were 3 bunkers over on the left here, couple on the right. This bunker did not exist though. And you had gradual narrowing of the fairway. It's, it was about 30 yards here to maybe about 22 yards down to 12, just short of there, right where this bunker is, or well, where it is now. We also had, actually, I'm going to go back to that. See how this rough right here was, and maybe I can zoom in. Yeah, there you go. So there was a patch of rough before you got to the bunker. Torrey Pines used to have that before. I think Reese Jones renovated that before the, I think 2021 US Open. Basically what this does is it's kind of like a bumper, like in bowling. It basically prevents, if you leak into the rough here, it's going to stop them from rolling in. Now, these fairway bunkers go right to the fairway. There's some intermediate rough here that might slow it down, but anything faster than that is going to roll right in. So now these fairway bunkers actually are more in play than they were, back in 2013. And you also see a little bit of more defined narrowing of the fairway at certain places. It's still 12 yards here. It's a little wider before the cross bunker here. It's 35 yards, 22 yards here. So definitely a little more defined. Otherwise, though, it's fairly similar tee to green, other than some repositioning of the bunkers, some tree removal. Mostly there was a tree on the left side here that was taken out. So what's your club selection on this hole? So it's 7 feet. The fairway is about 7 feet above the tee box here. And driver here is probably too reckless. First of all, this is an uphill tee shot. It's 303 to carry this bunker here. And this approach, I'll get to it in a little bit. This approach shot is really difficult. You do not want to be in these fairway bunkers, just in general, especially on this hole. It's 266 to here. So that can be a little bit of worrisome as far as, if you're holding a fairway medal or anything like that. But I think if you just get the ball with how I think the ball might roll out a little bit, if you can get it less than driver, hit to about the fat part of the fairway here and kind of roll it into this area right here, that's probably going to give you a pretty good look at this approach shot. That it's going to give you a short enough shot into it to make you feel comfortable. But also it's going to put you probably in the best spot to either maybe get it close for a birdie or, just hit the green there. If you're in the bunker, it's going to be very tough. If you're in the rough here too, you have this tree here on the left, kind of blocking your view to the green. Again, you might have tree trouble over here as well. I think there's some mounds over here too, that would cause some trouble. So who has the edge here? I mean, nobody. This is an execution shot. Can you land the ball about in this grid right here? That's it. Bomber, short player, whatever club you need to do to get it about in this box right here, set up about 100, 110, 125 yard shot to a green, by the way, that is about 20 feet up. That's the challenge of this thing, is you have to hit to an elevated green. So if you're in the rough here, yeah, it's a shorter iron, should be able to get under it, but you might get a flyer lie. There's actually, I think, a tight lie chipping area basically back of the green. So if you get a flyer, it's going to go through. You want to be in the fairway for, to basically launch the ball high in the air, get on the green here. So, all right. Third hole. I mean, the approach shot is the tee shot is the approach shot. So, but there's still a couple things that maybe I want to point out on this hole. So let's again go back in time. Again, a lot of tree removal. I think this actually had probably the most tree removal on the golf course here. So for this year, though, it's going to play at 230 yards. It was 214 back in 2013. I think they used this tee box right here. So we're adding about 17 yards. It was the 9th most difficult in 2013. So using this tee box right here, you basically are hitting through a narrow chute to a, a smaller green with, you got a back bunker. Um, so it's, it was a tough approach shot, but really just had to hit just straight. Now in 2021, so these bunkers are reshaped. The green was reshaped. This small bunker back here was moved and repositioned right over here. Couple things to keep in mind though, other than the fact that this is a 230-yard shot. There's some key points that you basically have to, account for if you're going to the green here. It's about 220 over to carry this bunker right here, but this point right here, this is the one that I think you really got to pay attention to if you're playing. It's about 225 to basically carry the false front. And if you come up short in this area right here, it's going to trundle back down the fairway here. So you really got to make sure you get up here, which that's going to be the challenging thing about this shot is you don't really have a ton of room, at least like depth wise, to stop the ball. But you got to make sure you carry it over. Otherwise, you're going all the way back down. I can attest personally when in 2013, I was doing an impromptu golf bet with one of my buddies. And it basically came down to Rory McIlroy versus Lee Westwood in the final day. And I was rooting for Lee Westwood. I was a Lee Westwood stand. Why? I have no idea. I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. But after 3-putting the second, I saw him come up short, trundle all the way back down. His chip shot didn't make it back up the false front, came all the way back to his feet, hit it about 10 feet back, 2-putt, double. That's basically the end of that bet there. So, and as everybody was cheering for Rory, because Rory was actually making a charge that day, I was going, come on, Lee, like a loser. I hope he's enjoying live. Anyways, so those are the key points to this hole. You basically got to make sure you carry it over that false front. Not a whole lot of real estate, once you get onto the green. So who has the edge on this hole? I mean, obviously you got to be a really good long iron player. I would say probably a longer hitter who can hit a little bit of a higher shot into this green. Anybody who's maybe has to hit a little lower lofted iron, not as high of a ball flight. If these greens are kind of running fast and firm, you might skip past the green here. There's a hill behind the green, but the rough should probably catch any balls that kind of rum off it. But still, you don't want to be long in this green because if you chip back, the ball gets running, you might be all the way back here again. So long is pretty much dead. These bunkers are pretty big. You probably don't want to be here. This one, if you're really going to miss, probably the one to be in. Otherwise, though, just hit the green, execute the shot, move on. All right. Par 5 fourth. This is going to play 615 yards. It was 570 in 2013. So they've added 45 yards to this hole. They added a new tee box back here. And actually, let me go back in time. So this was the easiest hole in 2013. It's a par 5. It's the only par 5 on the front 9. This hole was reachable in 2. It's the only par 5 of the 2 that is theoretically reachable in 2. So you see here again, like on the third hole, you had to basically hit it through a very narrow shoot to a narrow landing area, and there's a lot of trees over here. You couldn't shape the ball. Everything had to be straight. Couldn't start it left. Couldn't start it right. I mean, theoretically could start it right if you're really reckless, but everything had to be dead straight. No wonder Jim Furyk did well here. You had a couple fairway bunkers here. You're still hitting to about this landing zone here. It's a big poke still to the green. You can do it though. But yeah, everything had to be straight. Now let's look at the change in 2021. Look at all this room over here. Absolutely none. This is a power fader's dream. This tee shot, like you have so much room to start it left and peel it right, not have to worry about these bunkers at all. Man, like if you're a Koepka or a Rahm or even Morikawa, like you gotta absolutely love this tee shot right here. Just absolutely fits your eyes. Start at these, aim for these trees right here, get the ball back. As long as like this, with that west wind though, it might push it a little too far. Otherwise though, like this is just your ideal tee shot right here. You got to be feeling really comfortable doing that. So that's a huge change. This hole is that for a guy who loves to hit it left to right off the tee, like you're just right at home. Now, these fairway bunkers were pushed out. It is 317 to carry basically the corner of this bunker here. I'll talk about that in a little bit. 306 to carry this. It is 277 to this front bunker right here. It is about 20 feet down though. So again, like in the first hole, you're getting some extra carry distance on your tee shot. So obviously you're hitting driver here. Anybody who hits a nice fade, I think is at a great edge. If you can hit a power fade, that's great too. But your pro shots. And this is probably one of the only holes where you have options, on this hole. Most of these other holes is, okay, it gives you the answer. Can you do it? And then can you do the approach shot over and over? That's all you got to do. It's okay. This is where I hit the ball. Avoid this, hit it here. On this par 5, depending if you're a shorter hitter or longer hitter, you have some options. So let's say you get in this grid about right here. It's about 305 from the tee box to the middle of the dog leg here. And let's scroll up a little ways. Let's say you hit the fairway. So from this position right here, 305, which is a big poke, but with some, downhill carry, maybe a little bit of rollout, you might be able to get there. You have this bunker right here. It's about 247 to it. That's a pretty big poke if you're using, a long iron or fairway metal. If you don't catch it quite right, 263 to carry it. That's definitely in play. There's actually a little bunker right here too that's tucked under this tree. So for a longer hitter, if you get a 3-wood, get it past it, there's a lot of room right here. But if you're a shorter hitter though, like if you're Abe Answer, which probably you're more back here, you're probably laying back of these bunkers. And that's not an easy layup because it's really narrow. So you're probably laying it up short of the bunkers here. That sets up about, an 80 to 100 yard approach to the green. Or you can go for it, either bounce the ball up to the green or maybe get it somewhere here. If you're in this area right here, you have pretty good angles to anything back, left, and right. So that's the ideal position. If you're in the fairway bunker, you're splashing out to probably about here. And then you have about 150 yard shot to the green. You're not advancing it probably all that far down. If you're in the rough, there's some mounds over here that might give you trouble. The mounds, and there's nothing really over here, but it really depends on your lie. Maybe if you have a good lie, you're not making the green, but you probably could get it somewhere down to where a shorter hitter might lay up. If you can hit the fairway, then you're basically back in business. If it's a really horrible lie, maybe you got to go back here and you have a little bit longer approach shot. But there's also the possibility, is there anybody that might be bold enough to try and carry it over all the bunkers? Basically do what like a Bryson at Winged Foot. Carry it over everything. And if you do that, then you have actually a lot of room to roll the ball. You don't have to worry about it trundling off into the rough or anything like that. You can just let it roll and kind of end up in this position, have a shorter approach shot. Well, the only problem with that is you have OB here and these trees. You probably can't do that with a fade and carry it 317 over it with these temperatures. And unless there's a south wind, which on Friday there might be, if you got a south wind, you might be able to do it. But if you're somebody that probably has some more hit, like a right to left shot, that's cutting it really close here. I don't know. There's probably maybe only 2 guys who could actually do that. So otherwise, though, probably this is your landing zone. You got a long approach shot in. If you can pull this off, though, it definitely can shorten your approach shot about 250, 275. But otherwise, though, if you're in this zone right here, you're a longer hitter, you can carry it over this bunker here, avoid this here. It's still not an easy shot, but it's doable. So, all right, let's go to the 5th hole. This is a brand new hole. Tom Fazio, when he renovated this place, basically took out an old par 3, I think somewhere closer to, I forget where. And he replaced it with another par 3, which I'll show you on the next hole. a lot of people didn't like that. So Andrew Green, he couldn't put it in the old location, but he wanted to revitalize that old par 3. And back in 2011, so this actually was a practice hole for the members. You know, you got a little tee box here, you got a little green here. I'm going to be honest, I probably learned at one point why it was here. I forget from my caddy days there. Maybe if there was a backup on 6, maybe have some guys just practice. But yeah, there was just a little hole right here. So this is actually perfect to just kind of squeeze in a new par 3. So 180 yards, 165 to carry the front here, you know, heavily protected with some bunkers. You got a grass bunker back here. It's a tabletop plateau green with 2 tiers as well. So, so hole number 6, that was the hole this replaced. That was a par 3. That was 175 down the hill. It was the 5th easiest that year. So we'll see what happens here. I mean, you need a precise tee shot to make sure you're on the proper, tier of this green. Otherwise, 180-yard shot. Don't leave it short. Don't leave in these bunkers. Move on. All right, 6th hole. I think of all the changes to Oak Hill, other than the greens and the bunkers, I think this one was the most significant. This is an entirely new hole than what it was previously. So this is a par 4, 503 yards. This hole didn't, well, technically existed, but not in this form. Excuse me, I'm going to drink some water. This was old number 5. This was 428 yards. So they added 75 yards. It's entirely new hole, new shots. So you got to hit to the green. This was still the 5th hardest though in 2013 because this was the hole where you see the car crashes. You know, Allen's Creek bisects this property, but otherwise though, doesn't come into play a whole lot if you just keep the ball in the fairway and execute your shots. This is one of the places where it actually does come into play. So either off the tee here, if you hit it a little right, you know, you get in there. Actually, let's go back to 2013. So this is actually where the green used to be. So you see the creek winding its way around the left here, but this was a much shorter approach shot. This is only about maybe like 125 yards, 130 yards. This actually was where Rory's run. I mean, he wasn't going to win, but he made a couple birdies early. This is where it ended. I think he made triple on this hole. He hit this false front about right here, and it just slowly but surely trickled into the water. I think he took triple. That was it. And then he had the 6th hole here. This was the downhill par 3. This is where that was, that number 5, and it replacing. So now what they did was they took the old 6 green, which was the par 3, made that the new green on this long par 4. And now what that did was you have the creek still protects, you know, it still runs, you know, to the left and back here, but this approach shot is so long now. This is just a nightmare of a hole at this point. So they moved the tee box back. It's closer to the road here. They moved out some, I think they kept the bunkers positioned here. It just that now they're much farther from the tee, and they reshape them too. There's really nowhere to miss on this hole. If you miss in these bunkers right here, like you got to worry about getting over the creek here, or maybe you don't catch it right and it goes in. If you miss in the rough here, again, if it's a horrible lie, you got to worry about this creek. It's a long approach shot. Like you have no options at that point. And if you miss left, you're in the creek here. Oh, by the way, this fairway actually runs towards the creek. So again, the optimal shot shape here is, I mean, you have to hit driver on this hole. I mean, a left or right shot, right, get in this zone right here is perfect, but just keep in the fairway, man. That's it. And, you know, this is a hole where if you do hit it dead straight, you're a shorter hitter, you know, you're going to be way far back, but you're safe. That's the big thing. Otherwise, though, it's not going to be warm enough for anybody to really carry these bunkers here. Especially if we have one of those days with the south wind, that's now a headwind. Even with a west wind, that's going to push everything, you know, left here. Just hit the fairway at that point. And then as far as the approach shot, this is going to be a 200+ yard shot. to the green, probably. Really tough, especially if you're in the rough here. That's going to be difficult. Even if you're in the fairway with 200 plus yards, you leak it a little bit left, that's going to the green. You catch it a little hot, it might trickle down in there. You don't want to be in this coffin bunker either, basically, because everything kind of feeds down to the hazard. This is going to be a tough hole. This is going to be where all your car crashes are. Just really tough here. All right. 7th hole. So while the 6th hole had a lot of changes, a lot of dramatic changes, 7th hole didn't really change all that much. This is the area of the property where they didn't do a ton of tree work. It kind of really was the same. So this is hole number 7. It's a par 4, 461 yards. It was 461 in 2013. They didn't add any yardage to it. And it was the 3rd hardest, though, on the PGA Tour, or not the PGA Tour, on the PGA Championship. This green is really tough. It's one of the tougher greens to hit into. It's one of the tougher greens to putt on as well. So really difficult hole. So back in 2013, you see, I just slid down. Yeah, a lot of trees were removed, but if you still compare, all the important ones are still there. These ones are all still here right now. So for strategic value, they kept the ones that really mattered. They got rid of a lot of ones that just didn't. They were just there. They did remove a tree next to the green here. Obviously, you got the green work here. But otherwise, though, this hole is basically the same as what it was. And a lot of guys back in 2013, they did not pull driver. They pulled irons. They pulled fairway metals. And they basically were hitting into this zone right here. And they had a really long approach shot to the green. And flash forward to 2021, 22, or 2021 here, but 2023. Yeah, I think a lot of these guys are going to have something similar. So, I mean, if we just somewhere on, I wish I had the 3D rendering of this, but it's not updated. But basically what you're looking at here off the tee is you have a couple trees right here, a couple pretty tall trees, and the fairway, goes left here. It's about 250 to the middle of the dog leg right here, 285 to where the creek comes closest to the fairway. And then it opens up a little bit here. It's 348 then to carry over this. No one's going to be able to get there or carry it. So the question is, though, you do have a little bit of an opening here because they did remove some trees. Is there any way that someone will try and go for it and go over the trees? My answer is probably, if there is, probably one guy who can do it, maybe two. Otherwise, though, so it's about 300 to 301 to kind of right here where you can kind of see this patch of grass, which means that your ball has to basically be coming down perfectly at that point where, it's at this point with anybody's tee shot, it's coming down. So it's hard for me to imagine somebody has the trajectory to actually be able to carry it all the way over these trees and then bounce it here. Otherwise, probably gonna hit the trees. It's gonna probably rattle around down here. If you're in the here, you have pretty much no shot to the green at that point. So everybody's gonna be probably laying up again in this zone. So this is gonna be a less than driver hole on this hole. And that's a stalemate at that point. Kind of look at hole number 2. Longer hitter, shorter hitter. This is an execution test. Can you hit it basically in this little grid right here? And you set up about 175 to 200 yard approach shot into a really difficult green to basically hit into. I think a longer hitter on the approach shot has the edge because this green is pretty shallow. You want a higher ball flight basically for a soft landing. Otherwise, though, just target a guy who, otherwise, if you're a shorter hitter who hits his 175, 200 yard club pretty well, you're fine. So I don't see anybody having a definitive edge on this hole. It's basically just hit it here, hit it here. All right, the 8th hole. Again, another hole that didn't have a ton of changes to it because they mostly cut most of the trees over here. There was some bunker work, which I'll get to. But tee to green, though, it's still just all out right in front of you. So this is a par 4, 429 yards. It's 428 in 2013. So they want to just add 1 yard to make it difficult. It was the 6th easiest in 2013. So, it's a pretty straightforward hole. Go back to 2013. So the tee box, I think it's still the same because it's the same yardage. Do want to mention though, what's this bunker doing right here? Like, what's the point of that? Like, if you're a member, it's only about like 170 yards. You're probably hitting a really horrible slice over to this. And then you end up here. You're already feeling crappy about yourself because you're way far back. And then you got in a bunker. You got tree trouble. Why is that here? Bad job, Tom. Thankfully, Andrew Green removed that bunker and added bunkers that actually make sense to the hole. Now there's a cross bunker that's about 275 to get to off the tee. So if you're hitting a 3-wood, like that's right in your landing zone. And the fairway narrows to about 20 yards here. I mean, it's only 25 yards wide, but you're into a narrow landing zone with a bunker that might be right there. Like that's no bueno if you're holding less than driver. You got a bunker that's 312 to carry here. Theoretically, if you're a longer hitter, if you hit it really straight, you might be able to take that out of play. So I think at this point, so it's, you're basically hitting to, it's a flat plane tee to the, fairway here. It's only about 3 feet down. I think you just got to nut up and just hit a driver past that cross bunker right here. And just hope you get over it and hope you keep it straight and hope you don't get in that right bunker. There is a little bit of room on the right, or if you miss on the left here, they did remove a couple trees. And if you do miss on the left here, I mean, unless you're kind of blocked out by this tree here, you do have a pretty nice opening to this hole. Nice little angle. So I think anybody, that can hit driver, hit a little long and carry this bunker, take it out of play, be able to gouge out with a wedge. I think they can have some edge here. Otherwise, though, it's very straightforward. Can you hit your tee shot straight into about this zone right here and then set up about 100 to 125 yard shot to the green? That's really about it. Otherwise, you're probably going to be in trouble. So, but there's not really a whole lot to this hole. It's really okay. Hit it there. Hit it short end of the green. You could get away with it if you miss it left. You don't want to be in this cross bunker right here, or else you're pretty screwed. If you're in this little pop bunker right here too, you're basically screwed too. Okay. Hole number 9. This one they actually lengthen, and just kind of a tangent right now. This is actually probably a really good viewing spot. I spent most of my time in 2013 this place. There's a lot of activity here. You got the 6th green, 7th tee, guys teeing off on 9, guys teeing off on 12, guys playing the 8th. You could go over and see them playing 11. Just a lot of golfing opportunities here. It reminds me of at the Masters when behind the 2nd green, you got 2nd green, you see guys teeing off on 3. You can see guys playing 7 green, guys teeing off on 8. Just a lot of activity here. I know there's hospitality stands over here. So if you're going to go to the event, this is probably a place to go. But there's also probably going to be a lot of backup and probably a lot of slow play. This is probably where things are going to bog down because you're going to have guys waiting for each other, especially guys teeing off on 12. They got to take turns. They'll be waiting for guys, anybody on, teeing up on 7s, we wait till guys are done on 6. There's a lot of activities. Things are going to slow down. All right. So back to the hole by hole. Wow. This is going long, way longer than I thought. All right. I got to speed this up. All right. So hole number 9, this is par 4, 482 yards. It was 452 in 2013, added 30 yards to this hole. It was the 8th hardest in 2013. So going back to 2013, honestly, not a whole lot of changes. They did remove a lot of trees, I think, over on is that right? Yeah, they removed some trees over on the right. They removed some trees on the left, but again, they kept most of the important ones. It's a very narrow shoot, up the hill here. There's a bunker that's about 357 off the tee, off the hill. That's not going to be in play for any of these pros. With the tee shot, it's probably there as a nuisance in case you're maybe got a horrible lie here and trying to get back out, maybe hit a branch and in there, or I don't know. It's not really in play. It's more in play for the members. So they have a new tee box, adds 30 yards. It's about 7 feet up. You just got to hit driver this hole. This is a long hole up the hill. Reminds me again of Augusta, a little bit reminiscent of the 18th at Augusta, where, it's long par 4 up the hill, difficult approach shot. Very reminds me a lot of that. And you just got to hit a driver, hit a power fade, hit about this grid right here. This is a hole, though, that if you do hit a straight shot, it probably will stay in. So it's not like a wing foot situation where, if you hit it straight where the dog leg is, it's going to roll out. Basically, where the dog leg is here, it's about 320, 315 or so. So hit straight, it's going to stay. The fairway does camber to the left here, so it's a reverse cambered fairway. So there is a chance if you start a little left, it's going to leak in. Otherwise, though, it should stay in the fairway if you hit it dead straight. But again, if you're a longer hitter, hit a power fade, shorten up this hole as much as possible. That's just going to make it much more easier for you. So advantage here, long and straight. Ideally, a left to right tee shot is favored here. And then it's about 175 to 200 yards up the hill. But it's 25. The fairway is about 25 feet above you here. This reminds me of Bethpage Black here, where if you're in the rough, it's 25 yards to the green here. That's all carry. If you're a longer hitter, you can at least try and get up there. There's a false front that you got to worry about, but you can at least try and waste a pretty high approach shot into the green. If you are a short hitter in the rough here, you have virtually no shot at getting to the green. Your best hope is probably somewhere in this apron here, or, you don't want to bail out a bunker. So longer hitters absolutely have an edge on number 9 for a longer approach shot. Okay. Let me check the stream. Okay. We are doing good. Okay, we're an hour. God. All right, let's go to the 10th hole. So this is 430 yards. It was 429 in 2013. So again, only adds 1 yard. It was the 9th easiest in 2013. Going back to 2013, I can show you all the changes here. So again, a lot of tree removal, a lot of trees here to provide a buffer from anything going into Allen's Creek. Kind of elbows right here. There was a single bunker right here. And then obviously the green was circular. They redid that. Now in 2021, push out the fairway bunker a little bit. It's recontoured. It's 273 to carry, but this is all downhill at this point. And you're going west to east again. So with might be some west winds, you might be able to get a little bit of wind assist. This bunker probably isn't in play for anybody off the tee this week. You do have some mounds over on the left and right to basically dissuade against anybody kind of just bombing, not really worrying about where it goes. And now these trees are gone. You technically could reach this Allen's Creek here. I think it's about maybe like 305 in. The rough obviously will slow it down, but if you got a tailwind and you miss right, it's probably going in if you're a longer hitter. So who has the edge here and what club are they hitting? I think a shorter hitter definitely can hit driver. I don't think they're going to be able to get to 348, where the fairway runs out here. It is downhill, but I don't think while you're going to get some rollout, I don't think the fairway is going to be firm enough where it's just going to run and run and run. So if you're a longer hitter, maybe driver is going to be too much, especially if you have a tailwind. Otherwise, though, just who has the edge? Just hit it straight. That point. That's all. That's your only option here. You're setting up a short iron into the green. It's very straight out in front of you. You don't have to worry about if you hit a dead straight shot, it rolling into something. So probably a more accurate hitter actually has the edge here. And then the approach shot's about 4 feet up. It's about 100 to 125 yards here. Could you see somebody maybe a little farther back? Yeah, maybe, especially if you find yourself in the rough. Obviously, you're going to be farther back because the ball's going to stop. But if you find yourself in the fairway, it's going to be 100 to 125 yards into the green, probably more closer to like 125, maybe 130. But otherwise, though, very short iron to this green. That's all you really need to know about that hole. All right, 11th hole. Another long par 3. This one is 245. I forgot to change that. It's 245 in 2023. It was 226 in 2013. So they add 19 yards, and it was the 6th toughest in 2013. So again, going back to 2013, what it looked like. Just look at this broccoli patch. Look at all those trees. Now, the tee box is right here. But again, this was a very central theme to Oak Hill back in 2013. Lots of narrow shoots where you just got to hit the ball dead straight through it. No deviation for any curvature or anything like that. Just hit it straight. So now in 2023, all these trees are gone. And actually, that kind of makes the tee shot a little more intimidating because it's a long target to, it's way far out there. You don't really have a good aiming point or reference point. It's kind of just a sea of grass, and you just got to get up there and just hit it. If you really hit a poofer and you kind of block it out to the right, creek does come into play. Otherwise, though, the green was expanded, bunkers were reshaped. Kind of similar to the third hole. If you're a longer hitter, think you just have an inherent edge on this hole, considering it's 248. I mean, you're gonna have a shorter hitter probably hitting, maybe a hybrid or 5-wood or 2-iron or something like that. If you're a longer hitter, a little higher ball flight, make sure you get over the creek here. You got the edge there. All right, 12th hole. This was lengthened a little bit too. This is now going to play 399. This year was 372 back in 2013. It was the fourth easiest, though. This is actually starting a point in the golf course where you got to score. 12, 13, 14 all played under par for the tournament. If you want to make a little bit of a run, maybe get a couple birdies or so, this is the place to do it. So going back to 2013, though, again, you can see just all this tree removal. And again, you can see how this just favored Jim Furyk and Duffner. Look at this. No way to go left. No way to go right. Just clouds around. You just had to hit everything dead straight. There was no options for anything. Just hit it dead straight. And then you got a short approach shot to an elevated green. Now in 2023, and I'll zoom in a little closer here. Now they removed a lot of trees, and where some overhanging branches provided some decisions, now it's bunkers. It's 270 to this bunker right here. Pinches the fairway about 22 yards wide. At its widest, about 27 yards. Again, a very narrow landing zone. It's about 327 up here. If you really want to be take driver and try to get up there, I suppose theoretically you could see by doing that, but considering how, look at how this green is angled compared to the fairway. If you're coming in from about here, that's not a very easy, approach shot up. If you're really close to the green, it's, about 15 feet above you. It's pretty awkward. So I expect guys to probably hit less than driver, get it past this bunker right here, get in this little landing zone, probably, over here, maybe even keep it a little shorter than that even. If you're going to miss left, you got some tree trouble here. If you miss right, there's a little bit of room, but there are some more of those mounds down here to basically make it a little more trouble. However, if you really get lucky, if you really want to be bold, I don't know, maybe you're suicidal like Victor Hovland, and you want to hit it over here, just go way off the map. You actually do have a perfect angle with the green, theoretically. Otherwise, though, probably less than driver. I think if you hit driver in this hole, can you do it? Sure. I think it'd be too close to the green. I think you probably rather want to lay back, hit a nice higher, approach shot to it. Probably 100 to 125 yards would be the approach shot proximity for this hole. Probably plays more like 125 to 150 because you're hitting a little bit uphill. So, all right. Par 5 13. This is an absolute beast. So back in 2013, this played 598. Is going to play 623 in 2023. So yeah, it was the second easiest hole on the golf course in 2013. And yeah, I would expect it to probably be towards the bottom 5 in difficulty this week, but this is a very, very long hole. This is a 3-shotter, this thing. So they moved the tee box. This was the old tee box. They actually moved the tee box back closer to the 12th green, farther up the hill here. So you actually have more, basically more. It's more elevated from the fairway. It's about, I think it's about 35 feet above the fairway. So you're going to get more carry distance. However, it is 335 to Allen's Creek, about 345 to carry. It's 307 to where the creek gets close to the fairway over here. It's about 314. Excuse me. That's on the 10th tee. It's 307 to get to the creek here. You're not going to see anybody be able to go over the creek this year. There were a couple guys in 2013 when the tee box was closer and they had a little bit of a helping wind. I think Rory was able to do it. I think Charles Schwartzel actually was able to do it in 2013, carry over the creek. Everybody's going to have to lay back. For a shorter hitter, you can hit driver, hit it dead straight. You're probably going to land this zone here. If you're a longer hitter, you might have to hit club down, hit 3-wood, but again, you're probably hitting it to about this zone here. So again, this is an example of, I don't think anybody has an advantage on this hole. You just got to hit it straight. Get in this zone right here. Doesn't matter if you're hitting driver, doesn't matter if you're hitting 3-wood, the longer hitter, hit it here, because what happens next is going to decide what you score on the hole. You have to then basically pick your spots, or you basically have to then hit it to this area right here. Could you try and hit it over these bunkers? You could, but basically this fairway kind of, it basically it's elevated on both sides. It's kind of like a bowl here. So even if you do clear these bunkers over on the right here, it's really narrow. You're in the rough. You're in an awkward lie. Your best bet, and from this box right here, it's about 190 to 220. It's either about 190 to lay short of this bunker, about 220 just kind of get in the middle here. It's about 25 yards wide, the landing zone. If you just get in this box right here, that's going to set up about a 75 to 100-yard shot into this green. This is probably where you want to be. You have to get in the fairway, though. If you're in the fairway bunkers, again, you don't want to be there. It's going to make your approach that difficult. If you're in over to the left over here, you got tree trouble. There's some hummocks and mounds over on this area here. If you're not in the fairway on your tee shot, though, like, you are in a world of hurt. Obviously, you can hit into the water. If you're in the rough, you're probably not advancing it anywhere close to this box right here unless you get a really good lie. It's probably more back here. Now you have a really long approach shot into an uphill elevated green here. You really have to be perfect on this thing. And that's why I don't think that anyone on this hole has an advantage. It's hit straight, hit before the creek, get in this landing zone right here, set up a short iron. If you hit it close, great, get your birdie. If not, 2-putt, get your par and move on. All right, 14th hole. So this is the one where they've been promoting this hole a lot. They basically want this to be the drivable par 4 to basically, get some opportunities for a birdie. So it's actually playing about 3 yards shorter this year than it did in 2013, as if the 3 yards actually make a difference. It was the third easiest in 2014. Again, this is a stretch of the golf course where you're going to want to score. Going back to 2013 here, they took out a lot of trees. They really opened up the left side of this hole here. I think these trees are also gone on the right. A couple of those trees are. They still kept this tree here to be a nuisance. But in 2013, again, everything's just dead straight. You still had that bunker here. They contoured it a little bit. But, basically, it was just hit everything dead straight. It really wasn't possible to be drivable because you had this tree right here. You had to kind of just fit everything perfect. Everybody was laying short in this area right here. This is an elevated green that's about 25 feet above the fairway here. So it's a short iron, but it's not a very, it's still gonna be a little tricky, that approach. So the $1 million question, is anybody actually going to go for this green? Let's go back to 2021. Well, in order to answer that question, what are the consequences to missing this green? Well, you have OB over here. This is Ironically Country Club, by the way. I think they had a Corn Ferry Tour event here like a decade ago. I believe this is a Tillinghast design. You kind of see, though, it kind of looks a little bit like what Oak Hill used to look like. This probably needs Andrew Green to come in there. But anyways, if you miss left, you bring OB into play. Also down here, this area right here. Now, this might be where some gallery is. I'm not exactly sure where the ropes are going to be. So maybe it's trampled down. But regardless, though, this is about 15 feet below the middle of the green here. So you're chipping back up you might have a horrible lie, might end up getting stuck on the little ledge here. Might not be able to get to the green. So missing left is no good. These bunkers right here, these are pretty well below the putting surface. Like, it's about on plane with, the fairway kind of bleeds into it here. But this is not a very easy up and down from this green. It's a really, difficult green here. I think there's a spine right in the middle here. So dumping in a bunker doesn't really do anything. And then again, this is kind of a low-lying area below the green here. You might not be able to get to the green. There's some tree trouble here. It's 310 to carry all of this. It's not downhill, even though the fairway is below the putting surface. The tee box is elevated. So essentially, it's all carry, 309. And if the ball's running hot, it's going to run through. It's not going to go OB, but because the rough's going to get it. But I don't see really a lot of benefit to going for the green here. I don't think, even if you manage to carry all this, there's no guarantee it stays. And I just think the percentage is really low. And I think the downside is so much worse than just doing what they did in 2013, laying short of this cross bunker right here. It's about 245 to get it. It's about 30-yard wide fairway. You get here, and then you can set up about a 75 to 100-yard shot up to this green right here. I think that's your best bet. It's similar to what I think the strategy is probably on 12 is don't get too close to the green, lay up, lay back, get up to the elevated green. Maybe you get your birdie, maybe 2-putt, whatever. Otherwise, I just don't see, like, in order to have it be drivable, you need a bail zone. I don't see it here. All right, 15th. So this is another, it's an existing hole, but they did a lot of major work to it. So Tom Fazio in the 70s, because ponds and water were all the rage, added a pond. There was a giant pond over here. And he also repositioned, the green used to be up here, up closer to 16 tee box. He moved it 15 or about 40 yards down the hill. And then there was a big pond here. I remember actually the PGA put out a fan vote of where basically they got to choose where the pin was. And of course, like 65% of the voters wanted the pin right next to the water and I even voted for right next to the water because I didn't know about this stuff as much as I do now. I was like, okay, well, put the pin right next to the water. Let's see some guys, maybe go for it. And instead, all they did was they just bailed out right to the front left or left side of the green. That's all they did. Because pros, they're going to take the conservative route no matter what they do. Well, they end up filling this in. This is now a tight like chipping area. They recontoured the green here. These bunkers, they're, reshaped, but they're about in the same position. But it's shorter. It played 181 yards in 2013. It was the fourth toughest hole on the golf course, mostly because of the water here for the car crashes. But this is their take on like a postage stamp type par 3, like similar to like what, they're basically trying to go for number 8 of Royal Troon, essentially. It kind of looks a little bit too like the that drop kick par 3 at Brookline. And I know that was downhill, but it reminds me of that because, it's a pretty small landing zone, some thick rough around it, but it's plateaued, it falls off. It's heavily bunkered on all sides there. If you miss the green, it can bring double into play. You can kind of see that happening here. If you miss a green here, gives me a little bit of vibes of that. I think it's gonna be an interesting hole though. Short par 3, lots of trouble around it, especially end up, this, this chipping area right here. I think this is a good change. All right, 16th hole. So this was also lengthened. This is 404. This is going to be par 4, 458 yards. I'll zoom up here. 458 yards, played 439 in 2013. They were using, I think, this tee box right here. So they add 19 yards. This was the 12th easiest. Back in 2013, let's zoom back to it. Again, hit everything straight. Trees down the left, trees down the right. Look at all these trees too. There were no fairway bunkers at all. The only thing really that they ask was, Can you just hit it straight? And that's it. Now they added some more difficulty, even though they removed a ton of trees on the right here. They kept a lot of these trees on the left. This is the property line around Nicoya Country Club. But they added a couple of fairway bunkers. It's a tough driving hole. It's 295 to carry this first bunker right here, 340 to carry this bunker right here. There's some hummocks mounds over on the right here. Otherwise, though, if you do miss left, as long as you don't go OB, this is not a terrible place to miss. If you're going to miss on this hole, because you actually have a pretty good angle to the green. It's really wide open here. Now, this picture doesn't have it. This is added later. This is all going to be tight lie chipping area. So if you're in the rough, though, that's not ideal. You could have a flyer, you can roll through the green. It might go back here. So again, you want to be in the fairway. If you miss right, though, I mean, again, especially because you do have to hit driver on this hole. You got this bunker right here that's in play. You got hummocks mounds over on the right as well. For a really longer hitter, if you get a 340, I don't see anybody doing that this week with the temperatures. But again, this is just nut up, hit a driver, hit it to about, I didn't put the grid on here, but I would say probably put it about, like this area. If you're a shorter hitter, you're probably not getting to the bunker. If it's, with the temperatures, if you're a longer hitter, you're probably getting it to about there. There we go. And if you get to about here, it's about 150 to 175 into the green. Again, this is not going to be a very easy approach shot because you got to hit the green. There's some, roll off areas here. If you're a longer hitter, maybe you get out there, maybe shorten it up, but otherwise it's just, can you hit driver of the zone? There is a little bit of room to miss on the left. I would not miss right. Either you got the bunker here or you miss really far right. You got this tall tree right here. That's going to block your view of the green. And you're going to be coming right into that tight lie chipping area right here. It's not ideal. All right. Now we're going to get to some really tough. I would say probably one of the tougher closing stretch 2 holes of golf, that we're going to see here at Oak Hill in all of golf. 17, 18. This 17 was the hardest hole in 2013. It played 509 in 2013. They're actually giving the guys a break this year. It's only going to play 502. So congrats, guys. You got 7 yards to play with. So again, you can see a lot of tree work done. By the way, this is the West course. This is the members course here. So this is, I don't think has had any changes to it. No, it hasn't had any changes to it. That'd be nice if they actually came back into some changes, but probably not at this point. So a lot of tree work here. Most of these trees were removed here. But otherwise, pretty much untouched other than, the greens, the bunkers here. It's still same landing zones, same objective. So there is a ridge that's takes about 300 or 303 to get up to it. So for a shorter hitter here, this is a tough hole. This kind of reminds me of Winged Foot here, where basically, because the dog was at 303. If you hit a dead straight shot here, it might roll into the rough. So that's not ideal. And this is a really long approach shot. So that you got to basically, if you're short here, you got to, hit a fade. You got to basically shape the shot. There's not much room for margin for error here. If you're a power hitter and you're hitting driver here, again, power fade. Like if you're Rahm or Koepka, like this has to just really be in your, your go zone right here. So if you're in the rough, similar to if on hole number 6, if you're in the rough, you're pretty much dead. It's a long approach shot. You're not getting to the green. There's also, that's 2013. Let's go to 2021. So they took out all the trees, but again, if you're in the rough, you're pretty much dead. If you have a horrible lie, you also have to worry about these cross bunkers right here. You gotta make sure you're not in that. You're not getting to the green most likely, unless, you're a bigger hitter. You can carry those bunkers. You might be able to get around here, get up and down. If you take on the trees to the right, you're definitely shortening the hole a little bit, but you're not gonna be able to carry them all, especially in May too. I mean, it's about on the fly. I mean, this is how far is it? It's about 18 feet up from the tee box, so it's uphill tee box or uphill tee shot. You're probably not carrying these trees here. Again, just power fade, long and straight. That's the advantage on this hole. If you're a longer hitter, you absolutely have an edge here because it's a longer approach shot. Again, like I mentioned, if you hit a straight shot, it can run through the fairway if it's rolling a little bit. That's really about it. And then the approach shot's 200 plus into this green. Good luck. That's why it's the hardest hole on the golf course. And I think number 6 is probably going to usurp that this year, but this is still going to be a beast. And then 18, classic championship hole. It's playing the same length as it did in 2013. It's going to play 497. It was the second hardest hole in the 2013 PGA Championship. So going back to 2013, you know, you can see a little bit of tree work, a little bit of trees removed, but otherwise, they didn't touch that much. I think the members probably just didn't want to touch this thing. It's an iconic closing hole, other than just renovating some bunkers and changing the green up. Tee to green, I think they just wanted to keep it very similar. The fairway is expanded a little bit, as you can see here, mostly because, like I pointed out in the second hole, you have this swath of rough, basically preventing balls going in the bunker. Now, with the fairway, it kind of runs into it. So it's 33 yards at its widest. It's 325 to reach that corner bunker. I don't think it's a downhill tee shot. It's what, 435 here. No, it is downhill. So theoretically, you could see guys running into it. But I think for the most part, all these guys are probably going to be in this zone right here. Again, this is another tee shot where you got to nut up and hit driver. Can this first bunker be carried? If you got downwind, possibly similar to on hole number 4, if we get that really stiff south wind, you might be able to do it. Otherwise, though, you have to hit in the fairway. Hitting in the rough is basically just dead at that point. Hitting in a bunker is dead. This is one of those holes that reminds me of Bethpage Black, where, you have a gully right here, but it's all carry. This green is just sitting there kind of on an island. It's a severe slope down here. If you're caught up on the bank, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. So basically just hitting it pretty much in this zone right here. If you're somehow able to carry these bunkers, fantastic. Shoring up the hole. Otherwise, though, just with the temperatures in May, I think the fairway is going to run out a little bit. They're not going to be concrete, though. This is about 175 to 200 into this green. All carry. That's what you got to do. So that's it. That's for the hole by holes. We got one comment. Thank you, Don. Let's fucking go. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So at this point, can you guys see this screen? No, you can't. Let me go. Let me stop sharing that. And let's pull this up. Okay. And can you see that? Add to the stream. Great. Okay. You guys can see this. I summarized basically everything of what we talked about. So all the clubs you're going to be hitting, I feel like you're going to be hitting off the tee. Driver, less than driver on 2, etc. You can read through it. The optimal shot shape that I talked about. And then the approach ranges. And then I summarize all the data over here. So on shots less than 125, I count 4 shots. So about 22% of your shots during on the course of a round. That comes on hole number 2, comes on hole number 10 down the hill there. It's going to come on 13. It's a 3-shotter. And by the way, these approach shot distances, this is assuming that you execute the perfect tee shot. If you don't, if you're in the rough, you're going to be farther back and you could be in a whole world of hurt where actually your approach shot into the green is either maybe a lot shorter because it's your third, or you're just farther back. But this is just if things go absolutely perfect for you. 4 shots under 125. Again, number 2, number 10, number 13, number 14. And then we get kind of a no man's zone between 125 and 175. I only have 4 shots total between this range, and that is from 125 to 150. I have number 8 and I have number 12. You can split some hairs. Maybe this leaks into less than 125 on this one. And you can do that with a couple of these things. But otherwise, though, I don't see a lot of approach shots between 125 and 175. And then your 150 and 175 shots, it's number 1 and number 16. Otherwise, though, not a whole lot in this range. But where you really see the most shots, 10 shots over 175. Obviously, you have 2 of the par 3s. You have number 3, which is going to play 230. And then you have number 11 going to play 245. You have, I'm sorry, I actually screwed up this one. This is going to be, actually going to change that a little bit, but not much. Whatever. Just, okay. Uh-oh. Oh boy. All right. I got to redo this. There we go. This actually is now you're going to have actually 3 shots from 150 to 175 and 4 shots from 175 to 200. Regardless, though, let's just do that math. 22%. Okay. About half of your shots, your approach shots at Oak Hill are going to be over 175. You have the par 3 third, 230. Assuming you are a longer hitter, this is where you could have some flexibility here. Maybe your approach shot into the green is actually going to be 125 to 150 or less than 125 if you're a shorter hitter. But the guys who have a big advantage are going to be the longer hitters. The guys in the best position are going to be hitting their approach shots over 200. I mean, it's over 250 at that point. But that's where you got to have those longer approach shots. Your longer hitters going to have the advantage. The new par 3 fifth, 180 yards, 175, 200. 6, the long par 4, that is going to be over 200, especially if you miss technically, if you miss the fairway in that hole, your approach shot is probably going to be a wedge. The guys in best position to score on that hole are going to hit approach shots over 200. Number 7, that's a longer approach shot, 175, 200. Number 9 up the hill, 175, 200. Par 3 11th, that's over 200, that approach shot. And then you get a reprieve, like I mentioned, 12 through 16, a lot of shots under 175, and then punch it right back in the face. 17, 200-yard shot, 18, 200-yard shot. So these are about your proximity ranges you want to focus on. For me, obviously anything over 175 is going to be huge. Half of your shots are there, but don't forget this less, the 125 range too, your wedge shots. I mean, that's still 1 in 5 shots you hit. If you want to look at that, just because these are, your scoring holes where you got to be good. These are your opportunities to get birdies. So I wouldn't forget about this range either. I wouldn't worry about too much about 125 to 175 all that much. Just focus on your longer approach shots. Maybe factor a little bit of this into your shorter stuff because that's where you're going to score. Okay. As far as your par 4s and 5s, there are 14 par 4s and 5s on at Oak Hill. I say at 10 of them, you're hitting driver. You're nutting up. You're hitting it as far as you can. And then only 4 shots are less than driver. The ones that are less than driver, number 2, you basically position hole. Don't want to be in any of the bunkers. Basically just lay short there. Number 7, you're not going to be able to carry over the tree. So you got to lay back on that hole. Number 12, I don't see the benefit of hitting driver that close to the green. I think it's an awkward little short pitch up the hill. I think you're much better off just laying back and hitting a wedge, but I could be wrong. You can see. And then number 14, again, I don't see the benefit for going to the green. I think guys are going to lay short of that cross bunker, set up a shorter approach shot. But otherwise, though, 10 drivers. And as far as the driver holes, the ones you can drive, I think a fade left to right shot on half of them is really ideal. There's only a couple holes where I see a right to left shot being optimal, that's on number 1, and that is on number 16 here. And then just dead straight. That's number 8. Basically, got carried over that bunker there. That is on number 10, where everything's right out in front of you. You got the creek that's 348, but everything's just right there. Just hit it dead straight. Don't want to miss left or right. And then number 13, your only option is to hit it dead straight. And this actually makes sense. And this is going to be my final point of the stream here is, so let's go way back in time. Let's go back to 1968, 1980. So yes, Robert Trent Jones and Tom Fazio kind of put their claws in this place and kind of manipulated. But this was before when a lot of trees were overgrown. It was a little bit more open. And again, like tee to green, you know, back after these changes, it's very similar to what it is going to be in 2023. So Lee Trevino won in 68, the U.S. Open. His go-to shot off the tee was a power fade. And then in 1980 with Jack Nicklaus, probably one of the greatest faders of all time. That's his go-to shot. I mean, it shows up in all his golf courses. That's, you know, that's what he's, you know, that's, you got to hit that over and over. And I don't think that's a surprise that two guys that just go with their power fades won at this place. And now with these changes, you know, opening up the golf course, like I pointed out on the par 5 fourth hole, that is just a fader's dream at that point. Number 17 is a fader's dream. Number 18 is a fade. All these really crucial driving holes on this golf course, you got to hit a fade. And I think that's going to be so, like, that's really tempting to bet this week. Like, you think about a lot of these guys, just the top of your head. I mean, Brooks Koepka right there. Like, we've already talked about Bethpage Black at this place. I mean, he was in the mix at like a Harding Park. Like, I don't know if that had anything to do with fades or not, but like, all right, let's just go back, you know, Bethpage Black, that comp there. And all he does, he just hits these towering power fades. John Rahm, power fader. Scotty Scheffler, power fader. Dustin Johnson, who's actually leading the live event right now. I mean, I don't think we can really discount live at this point based on what they did in the Masters. Power fader. Even a guy like Morikawa, where there really is a premium to hitting fairways, and he's already done it at a golf course that was narrow with a lot of thick rough because he just hit a lot of fairways. A lot of these tee shots just fit his eye at this point. So even he's going to be somebody I'm going to consider. So I think that's going to be a huge edge, is just being able to hit a really long left or right tee shot on a lot of these important holes. It's got me thinking. It's got me thinking about this place a little different than before I did this exercise. And I'm actually glad I did this exercise. It kind of helped me come to that conclusion. So that's it. That went way longer than I thought. I did see we got a lot of viewers though. So thank you for watching. I'm sorry, took up all your time, but I hope you guys learned some stuff. I hope this was valuable information. And again, just being able to break down this golf course, a golf course that means a lot to me in this town that I'm 5 minutes away from, it really was a treat. So thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night with the preview. I'll have my preview column about Oak Hill coming tomorrow. It'll give an executive summary of this thing. I'll post the video anyways, but it'll give an executive high-level summary of what I talked about. But thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.